Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Kill Team 40k podcast and YouTube channel, focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to siege initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined by the shock Tyranid Victory in the Battle of Oghrim, applying copious salt in the wounds of the already nerfed Intercession Squad. I promise I'm not bitter. Connor, how are you doing this evening, Connor?
You're still salty, very salty boy about
very salty. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe it's unjustified. We'll get to the Meta Watch section in a bit, but it's gonna hurt for a while. Probably all the way up until Strike Force Justin, which I still think is a dumb name. Just saying, comes out and
Strike Force Kick has 5,000. Come up with your own names in the chat.
Strike Force were absolute badasses, named after a guy that sounds like he's from I don't know, some middle class.
Accountancy. He's tallying up all the slaying he's done. He's doing.
And he's like an ultra as well. And we know, they're fine. They're the poster boys, but they're a little boring. Yeah. It's no fun being Codex compliant. That's what I'm saying, right? You got to break a few of the
Raptors. That's what we want.
Yeah, Raptors are the ones, right? Like untraditional. I freaking love Raptors. And interestingly, a little bit of side tangent here that I didn't put in the show notes, but worth touching on. There was a transfer sheet that was released which had Raptors transfers on. So, I'm just saying, we haven't had new scouts in a while, and Space Marines are the ones that get all the good toys. So maybe we'll be saved by a scout kill team. And maybe they will have some sort of instant delete cult button. I don't know. It could be that.
Maybe they'll have some instant nerf.
They'll come out the box and just be hot garbage. And we'll see. I don't know. But this is the problem is, right, is like...
Kill Team Ian.
Yeah, they're going to I feel like the next team they're going to release, they're going to be so worried about them being too strong that they're going to now overcorrect, and we'll be back to Shadow Vaults. But yeah, it's a really interesting one actually. There is a conversation to be had about what's better. Is it better to have a team that is too powerful out of the box, or a team that is too weak? And I think now that we've lived through both experiences, I want to say too weak is the better option, because then whatever happens, it doesn't change the meta that much, right? It might just be like, whatever. There's this team arrived, but no one's losing their mind over it, at least. So,
and you can always bring it back, can't you? Yeah, I think you're right. Err on the side of caution, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. It's all interesting what happens from that. So there is a few things for us to talk about just generically, because we've been doing some work in the background, and one of the things that we've made, much to the help of the London TOs, specifically, that's easy for me to say, Pete. So, and he's helped me generate a Kill Team calendar that's now available.
What a legend.
Yeah, and it is really helpful to have people doing this. So it's now available on the link tree at the bottom. You just click on Kill Team calendar, and it has a list of all the UK events that are sort of planned so far with dates. I know for a lot of people, being able to plan their lives out ahead of time and say, yes, that's the date that I want to go to that event, is really good. So we're hoping to do a event ourselves towards the end of the year in November, if we can. And we're looking at the 25th and 26th of November, but we might even try and make it a 3-day. Well, I say 3-day event. It's not really a 3-day event. It'd be like a casual Friday night games for people who have travelled down to London to play it, and then Saturday would be like the main event, and then there'd be a cut, and then Sunday would be the top cut playoff with the last 16 players, and the last group then play off again in a second tournament, which is again slightly more casual. So various ways to win many trophies and prizes throughout the thing. So that'll be towards the end of the year. So I'm going to hopefully get on planning that, because Pete has been bugging me for ages to get my acting gear, and we definitely need to do it. So, but obviously you can find the dates for that and all the other London events now on that tab. And not just that, but I'm going to reach out to any TO that's out there in the world that wants to add their event to the calendar and they want to see where it is. You can hit me up, send me a message on Discord, whatever. I'll give you permissions. You can add your events. You can make an entire tab if you want to with a list of all your events, and then hopefully for anyone that wants to go to anything, you can collate together and find it, right, which is the main thing. So that'd be really, really cool.
What a phenomenal team. Also, thanks, Pete.
Yeah, massive thanks, Pete. So other Kill Team news, or not really Kill Team news, but Kill Team adjacent news. but we're gonna pull it into Kill Team news, right? Because I was hoping / thought probably that maybe a little bit the Kill Team, the Tyranid Kill Team would be a Genestealer Kill Team, right? And it doesn't look like it's gonna be them. You know, like
they're looking cool, but they're looking quite ordinary, aren't they?
Well, yeah, like each one of them looks good. So maybe there's going to be like an upgrade sprue, or we're not seeing all the parts because I know there's like one that's got feeder tendrils, but that's not really modeled. Like, so maybe there's something there, but it looks to me like they're just too generic, you know, to be a kill team. So that kind of leaves the question, like, what is a Tyranid kill team going to be? Like, are they going to do like a white dwarfery? Are they going to have like you can take up to X amount of this and X amount of this, X amount of this, like, or the Inquisition sort of model, you know, where you can like have a roster and you choose if you want warriors or whatever, and maybe the base thing is going to be warriors, and then you add things to it. I don't know.
I like that idea though, kind of like almost like Warp Coven, Inquisitorial Agent sort of idea. You've got a pool of points, and you can pick your elites and have an elite team, or you could pick your hordes, have a horde team, or mix and match it. Do what you want.
Yeah, it could be really cool. Especially if they sort of like weight it in points. Like if a warrior is worth 3, a Genestealer is worth 2, and then like you can sort of like take the compendium baseline if you wanted to, and then maybe your leader's like a Lictor or something, or a Von Ryan Leaper. That could be really cool. So a few options there, but you thought potentially it might be the Termagants, right?
Yeah, so the Termagants have been upgraded, haven't they? And now they've got like, well, weapons upgrades, which I don't think we've seen before. Typically, normally we'll have like the same gun, but now that like 2 or 3 of the models in the box seem to have some sort of better gun, so maybe that's leaning towards them having the kill team there with some special models.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few different weapons in that. I think they might have had them previously because they had like the Devourer, they had the Flesh Borer, they had these various things. But like, you are right that they are now looking very cool, like, and there might be something there. Now, you know, I think whilst we're talking about Tyranid guns, we shouldn't dick around. We should be really talking about the Tyranid Biovore, right? Because
that's a model with spunk.
That is a model with some spunk about it. Like, woo-wee! Like, is there a way that you could make a more phallic-looking Tyranid if you tried? Everything about it. It's yeah, wow.
Do you reckon really, the designer was just like doodling? They said, "What are you drawing there?" Survival. This is totally a Bible.
You know, the military thing is like, it's always really funny to just draw a cock in someone's notebook. I feel like he was basically building a big spider like Tyranid, and then someone just came in, cocked it, and the boss just walked in and just said, "Yeah, send that straight to the printer." Done.
100%. It wasn't reviewed. Just like,
it was like,
okay.
That moment where you're just in the meeting being like, "Oh God, it's like it's still going. Oh no." Like, maybe if we put some shells on top of it, will that help? Like, will it make it less look like a penis? Like, no.
I either admit that I left my notepad out of my sight and it's been doodling, or I just run with this. Say this was intentional.
This was actually the idea all along. It's like the thing where you go to the meeting, it's like, "Oh, this is great. This guy's got balls. Look at the size of this thing. I like this designer." And he's like, it's too hard to pull back on this one now. I'm literally balls deep. Oh man, what a model! What a model! We should probably focus back on Kill Team though before we get into some weird.
Or demonetized. So
yeah, we get demonetized in some weird like back part of the internet where there's a market for Tyranid. I don't know, whatever it's called. Right. Anyway, so before we get into that,
back on track. So I've got an idea. I've got an idea. So I was thinking about playing a more horde-based team, say 15 models, but I'm concerned about how long it's going to play. How could I play with a 15 model team a bit faster?
It's interesting that because it's almost like you're trying to suggest that maybe there's a team in mind that you had that's
any 15 model team.
Yeah. No. So it's actually like, this is a really good point, and I think, you know, let's address the question. It's like how to play faster, or another way to look at it is how to combat like analysis paralysis, is what I've heard it be called before. So like you're there and you have so many models, you need to get stuff done, and you really need to try and complete the game in time, because for a lot of people that when you go to a tournament for the first time, that might be your base objective. So it might be that. And there's a really cool guy on Vanguard Tactics, Stephen, and he talks about he has like a non-negotiable, like one like an objective you have to do, like the objective you're going to aim for, and then like your stretch goal is something else. So maybe it's like, right, I'm going to play all my rules correctly. That's my first thing that I absolutely must do, and then I'm going to try and play to within time as a non-negotiable. I really got to get that done. And if I do both those things, I'm really happy. I'm then going to focus on winning, 2, 3, 4 games, whatever it is. So, and there's some success in there. But, obviously, if you're a new player, it's very easy for a senior or experienced player just to say, well, you need to play faster, right? It's like, well, that's going to help. Like, how do you play faster? And so I've got a few things I think is maybe helpful for people that are trying to play faster and just, trying to get themselves like speeding up their games where possible. So first thing I'd say is, if you focus on playing one team, you can learn the rules better. So the less time you spend having to reference your rules throughout the game, the better off you're going to have to be. But let's say that you're not that sort of person. I'm quite lucky where for some reason, when I just read these things, they just stick, right? And people can ask me like various weapon profiles and that sort of stuff, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know what it is. But for a lot of people, they're not like that, right? So if that's not your way of learning or not your way that your brain is wired and whatever it is, then potentially try and think about other ways you can do it. So could you get data cards where you lay them out in front of you and you have those quick reference cards? So rather than trying to flick through a book, you just go straight to the data card, or maybe you tab your book up. So you have a page that says ploys, you have a little tab that says this, that, and then you can quickly get to the right data card really, really fast, and you're not doing anything from there. So from a preparation point of view, I think learning your rules and then maybe either tabbing your book or getting some data cards could be a really good way to do it. I think that's probably the first thing to do. But let's say you've done that already, and now it's actually the tactical application. How are you going to play faster, right? So let's say that you're in Turning Point 2 and it's your first activation, right? So you've on initiative and away you go. The first question that I think you should ask yourself is there something you absolutely have to do right now for this activation, right? Because that's the easiest way. So if you go, yes, there is, I need to kill this plasma gunner, or I need to kill this demo guy before he blows up his mine and kills 6 people, whatever it's going to be, then you do that thing first, right? So like if there is like a Brimstone Grenadier for the Blooded and he's got a Gaze of the Gods token on him and he's right in front of all your dudes, it's like, well, he needs to die first. It's non-negotiable, and you use whatever model has the highest chance of killing that model straight down. So that's an example of like shutting down a key threat. But maybe there's no like key threats that you need to remove, but actually you're playing loot, and the thing you need to do, the absolute thing you have to do is loot that objective, right? So focus on what it is that's what's most important right there and then. And I get that there's a little bit of like, well, how do you determine what's most important? But what do you think when you look at the board is the most important thing right then? Is it scoring points or denying a threat? And just go for it, right? And be like, I'm going to shut that down. And then if it turns out to be the wrong choice, like make note of it, take it to the debrief, talk it through with your opponent afterwards, and analyze the game and think, was that the right decision right there and then? And you can do that like after action review later on. But that's the first thing. The first thing is, right, there might be something you absolutely have to do. Now, when you're doing a little bit of like threat analysis and you're going, oh, what threats do I need to kill next? So maybe you have a few options. The first thing's gone, and you have a few activations in, and you're trying to figure out what to do next. Well, quite simply, where possible, kill threats that have yet to be activated. Right. So if it's a ready model and it's still to go, that holds a higher weighting and priority than a model that's not, right? And if you're in a rush-based game, so you're playing like Loot, for example, then the next the highest priority above all of them is the person that's going to score VP. So is that model that you're shooting going to create a VP differential? Like, is it going to help you like gain VP or deny your opponent VP? And then is it a threat that's yet to be activated? If it's all of those things, then you're always onto a winner by killing it, right? So like if it's going to be your route, your eliminate guard, and it's got a plasma gun, like you can go, right, this is a no-brainer, kill it, away you go. So I think that's like the standard way that I would say approaching your sort of like threat selection and how to begin a game. But let's say that you're in Turning Point 1 and you're thinking to yourself, right, well, I'm playing like a 15-player team, 15 model team, and I don't really know what to do now because I've done the first few activations, and now I've got loads that I need to do, and my opponent doesn't have much to do, right? So the other option that you have is just working backwards from what you want your last action to be, where you need to place models to achieve that, and then go from there. So let's say your last action is going to be a model moving on and capturing a point, right? Maybe to get to that point, they need to have a comms buff, or maybe it's like capture, so they need to be comms buffed after they got to the point. And so like what you want to do is be like, right, so my last activation is going to be this guy, so then my comms is going to go before, and then to get that person there, I need to move this guy out of the way, and I need to do, and you just work back like that, and then like that becomes your non-negotiable, and you can just go through sequentially, and that might be a really good way of just speeding up the game, in a sort of like a working back rather than forwards, because when you're trying to do it forwards, it can be really difficult, right? And you're like, oh well, not too sure what to do next, but it's like actually my last activation is this guy moving, and then the activation before that is a comms buff to achieve it, and therefore this person needs to get out of the way. Right, I've now got 3 activations left, and that's easier for you to figure out. Does that all make sense, Connor?
It does. One thing I wanted to touch on though, you said shutting down a model by killing them. But I think, that's actually the best way to shut a model down, but it's not the only way you can shut them down. Sometimes, you might be looking at the shop, but you haven't had a chance to put the synergies together yet, so you haven't got the rerolls in place, and you're only looking at a 50% chance to shut that model down by killing them. Well, you could actually melee charge them, particularly if they're only 2 APL without a comms buff, because then they have to choose between fighting, falling back, and then they won't have the movement to move and throw their brimstone grenade onto someone else after they fought you to kill you. So consider just sacrificing a GA2 model and using one to just tie up that threat that needs to be dealt with immediately.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if you look at like conversely from threat saturation, let's say, oh, can I shoot this one threat that I need to kill? Yes, and I've killed them. And then can I charge a second threat and kill them as well?
Yeah.
Or not kill them, but like deny them that threat? That's another good way of how to combat that threat saturation as well. So look at that as well. Like, let's try and find those options where you can. A few of the patrons asked me to sort of go from like the what's your military experience? Can you put that into Kill Team? And there is something that I actually think is worth pulling out from it. So there's a thing in the Air Force that they talk about the OODA loop, which is effectively where you observe, you orient, you decide, and you act, right? And it's like a decision making process. So you have to see what's happening in front of you. You have to understand what that means relative to the world around you. You have to make a decision based on that, and then you have to do the decision, right? So, in the instance of a game, right, observe might be seeing what your opponent's move is or their board position. They need to think, how does that change what models I have and what's going to happen, and then make a decision. I'm now going to do this, and then your act is moving your model, measuring it out, rolling the dice, right? Now, the idea being is that the faster that you can do this loop, because it is continuous, right? The faster you can do it, the better off you are. And you end up in a decision advantage if you can do it quicker, right? So if you can observe the board state during your opponent's time, like during their turn when they're acting, orient it to what you want to do and make a decision prior to them finishing their act, then you can immediately act as soon as they finish. So they roll their dice. You then immediately roll into, I'm moving here, doing this, and shooting this guy, rolling the dice. And then boom, suddenly you have time advantage because now they don't have the ability to observe, orient, and decide during your act because they're responding, right? They're still in the almost act itself. They're still observing what you're doing. So that's like another way of getting ahead. So use your opponent's turn to think through your next move, and it's really interesting. You see people do this, like that they'll make a really stressful decision, and they'll relax, right? And they'll go, "Oh, thank God! Like I'm done now." And it's like, actually, you want to be doing the complete opposite, right? You want to be thinking most when your opponent is acting, and be like, right, what am I doing next? Where am I going to go during your opponent's turn? Think about all these things, and just get your head like ahead of the game and be like, right, okay, what's the next move? Where am I going to go? And it might be you go, all right, well, if they move the guy on the left, then I'm going to do this on the right. Or if they move the guy on the right, I'm going to do this on the left. And something as simple as that, right? And you just break it down to 2 options. They move the guy on the left, and you go, cool, I'm going right, away I go. So that's like the next thing, I think. So if you do that, then like if you use your time wisely, then when it does become like a really important decision, there's like a lot of complex options. Well, then actually you have more time, right? Because you've used it in a intelligent way earlier on, if that makes sense. I think that would really help. Does that kind of make sense, Connor?
That is 100% good advice, I think. And I just want to maybe just paraphrase what you said in a different way, just because it is such a key point. I think you want to be observe, orient, and deciding in your opponent's turn, so that in your turn, all you are doing is acting and giving a very small window for your opponent to observe, orient, and decide, and thus snowball that time advantage. That's what you're trying to aim to do. I think that's my takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and this becomes particularly important if you're using chess clocks. And I think it's something that we should, as a community, normalize, because we're seeing these really big teams coming in now, and they are slower to play. And if your opponent takes a very, very long time to play this big team, they will probably outplay you. If you're playing an hour and 45 game and they play for an hour and 30 minutes, right? Like they're gonna beat you, but you can't let them do that. And I think that's why we have to normalize chess clocks, because this is so important, right? Like part of the game is making decisions timely and playing within time. And I think that's what we got to do. So we, as a community, like we have to normalize chess clocks. Like chess, literally only use chess clocks at the competitive events at the high levels, right? Because they understand that you have to get it done in a certain timeline. Otherwise, you'll just be here forever. And yeah, so I think we have to do that, because in this instance, you know, a lot of these big teams, that is their weakness, right? Is that there's so much to think about, so many options, you'll likely time out unless you're a proficient player and actually, you know, all over it. So for me, that's what I think we need to do. I think that's probably what my key ways on how to play faster and how to sort of like avoid that analysis paralysis. So just to quickly, you know, resum like the what we just talked about in the quickest way possible. Is there something you absolutely have to do? Shut down some key threats where possible. Kill threats that are yet to be activated. Work backwards from your last activation. Work that OODA loop and use your opponent's turn to think through your next move. And then use your time wisely so you have it when you need it. Use chess clocks and practice with chess clocks. You know, the more you practice, the better you're going to be. I think that's how I'd probably summarize that advice, Connor. Any thoughts on that?
I think there's an argument to be made that even from a non-competitive angle, chess clocks are a good idea. Just the logistics of trying to play a tournament in a day. You want to get 4 games out. You're not going to finish in a reasonable time unless, you know, you say, right, everyone gets an hour 45 or an hour 30 to play their games, and that means we'll get 4 matches in the day and be able to go home and see our family at the end of it. And even like thinking about, you know, going to a club on a night out, if you start at 7 and you want to get 2 games in and go home before 11, you need to be doing these inside 2 hours. So, and we've played Kill Team very casually before, and you know there may or may not have been alcohol involved, and it's taken several hours to try and finish this.
In my defence, I was very, very drunk.
What's the rule in this? Don't care. Just roll the dice. You know, crack out the chess clock. I think we should normalise it, and it'll make the game so much more fun.
And here's the thing as well, like, so let's say you're down the local club and you are playing, right? You don't have to hold your opponent to task on it, right? On a casual game, you know, you don't have to be like, sorry, you're timed out, you know, it's over. But I think it's healthy for both of you to be aware of how long you're taking to play.
Yeah,
because you are right? You know, if you go down to the club and you can get 2 games in, that's inherently better than just playing one really long game. Normally, I'd say. So, you know, I think it's good and I think it's healthy, and it probably makes people aware of where they're spending their time. Because so here, actually, there is more advice. Here we go. You managed to tease it out. There you go. Ugh. I knew you should have left it. We'll never finish this episode in time. Okay, so the next thing that chess clocks are going to do, right, is they're going to tell you how long you're spending on various parts of your game. So how long are you spending on your deployment? You know, how long are you spending on your barricade placement? How long are you spending on, you know, actually doing your first moves? Because, for instance, let's say Into the Dark, you can probably plan out your first turn roughly on most maps. And it can be absolutely rapid. You know, there is just a sequence of things you have to do, and there's a little bit responding to what your opponent does, but generically, most of them are pretty, you know, out there, and you know what's happening. So, you know, start looking at that. Like, is your deployment taking you way longer than it should be? Like, are you spending 15 minutes deploying? Because if you are, that's too long, right? Like, you need to start thinking about how you're gonna expedite that. So maybe you pre-group. Yeah, we talked about it in our deployment episode. Go back and check that out. It's like, I don't know what it says, episode 4 or something. It's like really early on. And like grouping them into ways that you think is useful. Group them up, figure that out, and maybe don't change it. Have your generic tac ops that you're going to take, and think, well, if I play into elites, I'm going to change this one. But other than that, these will be the 3 that I'm going to take. Whatever it's going to be, like think about it ahead of time. And because you can make all that in your prep, right? So you can know before you get to the board, these are things I'm going to do. And then chess clocks will show you, like, if you're starting the game and you go, oh man, I've only got 30 minutes left on my clock because I just finished deploying, you can go, oh, that's where I need to sit. Like, that's where I need to focus on getting my time back. So that's what I would say is a good way of doing it. And I think that chess clocks can be a very good practice tool for you. I'm not saying, go to your local club and force everyone to use chess clocks and tell them that you're, going to cancel their ability to play if they don't finish on time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is take a chess clock and say to your opponent, are you right if I practice my own timekeeping with a chess clock? Don't worry about it if you time out. It's for me, right? Because what would be really interesting is if you see like all these Chaos Cult teams and people are going and they're winning, but they're taking an hour to win. Well, it's like, they probably win on turn 4. Where it's like, well, if you don't ever get to turn 4, then you're not going to win. So you have to be able to play to the time that your team needs, if that makes sense. That's hard to say. Right. Any more thoughts on that, Connor, or have we covered off how to play fast?
I think we have. Should we quickly move on to the next section?
Yeah, let's go to the next section. So, Meta Watch. All right. So, I think it's important to look at who's winning, who's losing, or, who's the best performing, who's the worst performing teams in the moment. And we've done a little bit of stats diving. We've been using the data that Hot Sauce Teddy has very kindly collected and composed and put together. And we're only using 1 month. So we're only using the latest results from the post the balance data slates. And it won't be including, I think it was last updated like a couple of weeks ago. So it won't be including the most recent tournament results. So we have a bit of data on that as well. But do you want to go through, Connor, and just let people know what the top 5 teams are that are coming out from the stats?
Yeah, so coming at number 1, you might be surprised to hear this is Star Striders at 77.8%, followed closely by Chaos Cult at 68.6%. Then another shock here, Galapox Infected, sitting at 67.6%, followed by Felgor Ravagers, 64.7%, and then finally, the new kids on the block, Inquisitor Allegiance, 60.3%.
Cool. So, first caveat, right? Very small data set.
Yeah.
So before people start losing their mind, very small data set.
We see you typing in the comment section.
Salt is typing. So firstly, Star Striders, I think that is like 2 players. And they went like 4-0 and then 3-1 or something. It's a very small data set. So before people get too worried, it's not a huge amount, but and it's probably Ace, right? Like we know Ace. We know you're playing Star Striders. You're enjoying them, right? I think you actually might be playing Exaction Squad recently, but yeah, like we know what you've been doing. So anyway, point being is they're at the top. I'm not 100% surprised. They're a good faction. They've got some good pilots at the moment that are running them. I think they have some good tools. They have some abilities to be able to.
I think they got the Relentless Rotocan. Get rid of that. It's too good, obviously.
Whoever did that enough was stupid. No. But I don't think they're that OP. I think they're in a good place. I think they're probably one of the few teams that with the Alpha Strike ability that they have with their blast weapons might be able to put the scare onto Colts a little bit because they can actually do some big damage from orbit. And if you weaken them, if you just chip them a little bit, and you get them into that melee area where they won't survive the melee fight, then that's quite good. So, but anyway, fine, they're at the top. Chaos Colts, again, this isn't too surprising. That's a much bigger data set as well. So we're kind of seeing them rise to the top. Now, Galapox Infected, I was thinking about it the other day, Actually, it does kind of make sense because they are very good at melee, and we're going to talk about later on in the episode or in the next segment if you're not a patron, but you'll get it at the end of the week. But like, we're going to talk about how to beat these teams at the top, and I think one of the ways is outperforming them in melee, and with the 5 at full no pain, which is great, the ability to make people injured, and those kind of benefits. I feel like Galapox have the methods to really like hurt those melee teams. Like, it's very hard to survive a melee with a Hulk, right? Like a Nightmare Hulk, and therefore it's going to hurt them. Next, we have Felgar Ravagers. Again, like similar story. I'm not surprised to see them. They're enjoying the meta at 64.7%. It's pretty good. And then next on the list is Inquisitorial Agents, which again, I think it's not too surprising. They're quite a big toolbox team, so I would expect to see them somewhere near the top. So it's interesting that all these are above 60%. As the data stabilizes, it'd be interesting to see where they end up, and hopefully as that data set gets bigger, because I think really, you can only really look at it from from data slate to data slate. That's where we get enough data for it to become slightly more static. But that's the top 5. So yeah, an interesting mix. Some that aren't too surprising, to be honest, and kind of what we're expecting. But Connor, what people really want to know, the double hello tier, so to speak, the anti-meta chaser, if you will, the hipster faction picks. What have we got at the bottom 5?
So Team 5, we've got Haratet Circle sitting at 38.6. Coming at 4th, Hearthkin, looking at 36.1%. Pathfinders, 34%. That's a shocker. Exaction Squad sitting at 33. And then in last place with 33%, Intercession Squad. No, sorry, Kazakin.
But it feels like Intercession. Okay, so let's run through it. So Kazakin and Exaction, both on 33%. I'm not too surprised about Kazakin. They hate this meta, I think. Like, that these very good melee teams that are very damage resistant, like, are not good for them to play against. And I think they're driving a lot of elites out, which is what Kazakin really succeeds versus. So I'm not too surprised to see at the bottom. Exaction has surprised me a little bit. Now, this might just be because it's taking a bit of time for people to warm up to them and like post buff, and like, oh, how's it changing things? And so that might be part of it a little bit. But I feel like they should be better than 33%. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Pathfinders, I think they hate ITD. They hate Felgar Ravagers. They hate Chaos Cults. And I think they're really not enjoying this meta, right? So, this doesn't surprise me. I don't want them buffed though. Like,
no, I agree. I just don't know how they counter Felgar. What's their strat against them? I don't know.
So this is kind of my point of this would be this, right? Is like, this is a Felgar problem. This is not a Pathfinder weakness. Right, like that's my personal take.
Yeah,
is like you don't fix Pathfinders here by giving them a buff and leaving Felgar where they are. When Felgar and Colts and the other teams are toned down, I think Pathfinders will find their natural place again. So, and I think as well on the mixed formats on ITD and that sort of stuff, that's where they're struggling. And the other thing that I would say about Pathfinders is they are immensely difficult to play. And they have such a high skill ceiling, so it's very difficult for people to pick up and play this team. So if people are playing it for the first time, or even an experienced player will struggle with them, right? Because they're not an easy team to play. But you always have to have that painful experience where someone then takes it and really stretches it, and shows you what the team can do with that toolbox. I realised what I said was awful, but never mind. Okay, so
again. I was like, where's this going?
We're back to the phallic Biobor. Oh God, not again. Okay, so to speak, whatever. Right, into Hearthkin. So 36.1%. I was talking to, as I said the other week, one of the guys at the local club, a really good Spanish player, and I don't really know what to do with, like, how would you fix this team, because that is not quick enough, and I don't think making them super durable is going to help. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And Hyrotech, a little bit shocked, 38.6%. I think that's purely because they're not reliable enough. So maybe I'm being too generous with them in the tier rankings that we did last week. But I don't know. I feel like they have some abilities, but they probably don't like going into Inquisitorial Agents too much, and they probably don't like going into the Felgor and the Chaos Cults, as no one really does. So maybe that's why that's hurting them quite a bit. And I feel maybe it's also the fact that they just don't have the reliability to deal with those teams as well. But yeah. Okay, Connor, so that was kind of old data a little bit. There's obviously been 3 semi-large tournaments quite recently in the US scene, the UK scene, and the Polish scene. Should we talk about the US scene first? Because that was probably the biggest one with 63 players, I think.
Yeah, the Tacoma Open, 63 players. Let's look at the top 8 here. So coming in at 8th, Chaos Cults. 7th, Felgor Ravagers. 6th, Orc Commandos. 5th, Void Dancer Troop. 4th, Intercession Squad. 3, Hand of the Archon. 2, Phobos. Well played, Phobos. And then first place, Intercession. So what I'm taking from this is that Intercession weren't nerfed enough. What are you taking from this
We
one?
need to nerf Intercession into the ground. Nerf them into the ground. Now, I don't know if they were using the latest balance data set. I'm going to assume that they were.
I see.
But this is interesting. I am surprised by this. But it's actually kind of good to see. That's a pretty good spread of teams between all those options there. And Distinguished Gentleman bringing the Phobos Strike team out to get second place, and in session as well. I think that's a really good showing by those guys. The top 3 is in session, Phobos, and Hand of the Archon, all different teams, different play styles. That's really impressive, and I feel like actually people are figuring out ways of dealing with these teams by taking quite a lot of increased risk. Because that's kind of like the thing at the moment, right? The question on everyone's mind is, how do you beat Chaos Cults? How do you beat Felgor Ravagers? I'm actually really impressed to see that they managed to get above Felgor Ravagers there, because I find that such a hard matchup with those elite teams. So that's really interesting to see. So if we look over to the London Open, Connor, what was the top 8 there?
Top 8 sorry, I haven't written down how many were in this tournament, but the top 8 in the London Open, coming in at 8th, Kazakin. So ignore everything we just said about Kazakin. They're OP. 7th was Legionary. 6th, Intercession Squad. 5th, Chaos Cult. 4th, Chaos Cult. 3rd, Inquisitorial Agents. 2nd, Illusidian Star Striders. And 1st, Orc Commandos.
Yeah, so this I think is showing a really interesting trend that we'll see repeated quite often. Commandos are I think the go-to team at the moment to be able to beat Cults on open board. Because a good strategy is Alpha Strikes, and they have access to a lot of Alpha Strikes through various means. But so that's interesting to see. And Star Striders, again, not too surprised to see. And Inquisitorial Agents up there, which makes sense. We did a guide the other day on it, talking about how we think you can beat those teams. And then 4th and 5th going to Chaos Cults is good. It's interesting to then see the elites and then followed by Kazakin. That's again quite a wide split. But 2 Chaos Cults, I think there might have been 3 players for Chaos Cults, and 2 of them made it into top 8. So good to see that they're still repping pretty hard, and they're still doing pretty well. But let's have a look across to then Poland, Connor, in the Drop Zone tournament.
Yeah, Drop Zone Poland, top 8. So coming in at 8th, Farstalker Kinban. Well played. 7th, Yellowpox Infected. 6th, Legionary. 5th, Void Dancer Troop. 4th, Orc Commandos. 3rd, Intercession Squad. 2nd, Legionary. And 1st, Inquisitorial Agent.
Yeah, so this is and the interesting caveat here was there were no cult players.
Okay.
And to be fair, the guy who's playing Inquisitorial Agent is, I'm going to say it wrong, Matthias, maybe? Mateus? Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm sure I've butchered that. I'm really awful at that sort of thing. Right, anyway, but he's a really good player, right? And he plays Vet Guard all the time, and he's now moved on to the Inquisitorial Agents. I think he's it's unsurprising to see him at the top. And I probably should have said that about the other ones as well. Like Orc Commandos was Nick Collins, and I think the Incredible Agents in London was, I want to say it was Guy. So there's some really strong players that are playing these top teams. But interesting to see how they've ended up, right? Because there's quite a few there's quite a few elites in this Polish meta that have risen to the top. So Legionary, Intercession Squad in the top 3. Another Legionary player, and I would say Voidance Street probably classed as a mid-range to elite team, all in the top 8. So that's really interesting to see. So I feel like maybe in Poland, where there's not too many cults, that they seem to be doing okay. And I don't know if there's any Felgar Ravagers there, but a really interesting spread. So some good data coming in. I think we'll have to watch this as we come on, as we go. We'll have to keep the meta watches updated, but so far so good. All right, Connor. So end of that. So let's move into the next section. But before we do, if people are enjoying the podcast and they wanted to support us, how would they be able to go about doing that?
Yeah, so the best way to give us instant support would be to join our Patreon. It costs you as little as £3 a month, which is enough to get us a coffee at some of these tournaments that Ryan goes to. But what does that get you? Well, that gets you early access to all our videos, which would include this one. If you wanted to watch the whole video in one go, you could jump onto our Patreon and see that now, as well as some exclusive Patreon-only content. We've got Discord there. We've got battle reps on there. Yeah, there's all sorts going on. There's also still room to become a Centurion, so we're trying to get 100 patrons. I think we're currently sitting at 94. So if you were thinking about becoming a Centurion, Reese, look at you. Sorry. Then there's still room, and you'd be a Centurion. But
now,
sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say now. Obviously, the key benefit of the Discord though is the meme channel, right? There are some spicy memes being cooked up in there regularly at the moment. So
there's a few good memes, and I'm gonna say there might be a few pictures of a possible Momoa Legionary team being constructed. whoa!
That's Patreon only. They can't know about
that. Okay, so moving on. We understand. Times are quite rough at the minute, and £3 a month it's quite a lot. So fair enough. If you just want to drop us a like and subscribe on YouTube and share this video, that's another way to help support the podcast. Or maybe you're looking at this and you've seen some teams, got some ideas, and you want to buy some new models. If you buy them through Element Games using our affiliate link, then they'll afford you, I think they give 15% off or something like that, and we'll also get supported that way with every purchase you make.
And is that it? Are we done?
You're just shocked that I said affiliate correctly, aren't you?
No, I'm amazed. It just sort of trailed off like it was done. I was like, oh wow, okay, well, we're moving on. Okay, cool. Well, you heard it there first, guys. So join, become a Centurion, help us out. Connor will say affiliate better and better every week. I can't promise that. I take it back. That is not a money back promise. Okay, so let's push into the next section, because there's 2 subjects that I think it's probably worth covering, which I struggle to fully cover, but we need to do it. And it's how to beat cults and how to beat Beastmen. So let's start with how to beat cults. Connor, any ideas? Over to you.
I think you might have touched on something with Commandos and possibly Star Striders when you discussed Alpha Strikes. Maybe if you can stop that mutant train in its tracks straight away, that might be the one weakness this team has. But what do you reckon?
Yeah, so what it's looking like is Alpha Strikes are your friend. If you can do some serious damage to them early enough, it's going to slow down their ability to score points. And if you can then capitalize on that, then you're in a good place. So teams like Commandos, I think, are able to do it, because if you can effectively max your points or get as close as possible and really VP deny them as much as possible on turn 1 and turn 2, then you can push for like a 4-4, 4-4-3-2, and that's enough. That's enough to give you a little bit of a marginal gain. And also potentially focus on killing some key models, because if you could, for instance, kill their icon or their leader on turn 1, then that's really good. Things like the dynamite, being like a pretty high damage profile and being blast is really nice. So that's going to force them to potentially lose some key models that they don't want to lose. But like if you have anything in your tool set that looks like that, then that's a good way of doing it. So if you can slow down those mutations, you're in a good place. And this is kind of where I think you have to just focus on the game. Like, and it sounds really bad, but like you're going to have really high casualty rates, right? Like they are probably going to table you, and that's fine. You just have to play the objective, focus on the points, and just be like, how can I deny them 1 or 2 points? That's all it's going to come down to, right? Is like it's probably going to be a very, very close game, and you have to really, really, really focus on it. So if they're playing like Seek and Destroy, you got to start predicting their secondaries, right? If they're on like Rout, you have to understand that they're basically only a melee team, right? So if you move all of your guys forwards, and this sounds like dumb, but like it kind of what it is, right? Like if you move aggressively forwards and stop them from scoring Rout, then that's good for you, you know? And so if you can then sort of like push onto their objectives and try and take the fight to them in a weird way, that's good for you. Because if you wait until turn 3 or turn 4, they're going to table you, all right? So it's marginal gains. You got to play hard early, and you really have to try and get out the door swinging. And it's similar to when you're playing against Galapox, right? Like, you know they don't have any shooting, so you want to make sure that you have basically everyone engaged. Now, don't get caught out by the Icon, because he does have a ridiculous flamer profile that's going to absolutely murder you. So spread out a little bit where possible, and don't let the Icon get more than a double kill with his flamer, because that's gross. But, you know, try your hardest to push forwards and deny them as much ground as you can, or make it so that if they try to push into those middle objectives, it attrits a lot of their models. Play around a little bit with the APL manipulation if you can. So you try and put your comms buff models onto the objectives and try and hold them back. Or if you have like an ability like Terror or something similar where you -1 APL, use something like that as well. And I think that's probably where you have to try and do. So at the beginning, that's my baseline sort of advice, right? Next thing is going to be, and we said it already, use a chess clock, right? Your opponent has 15 models. They owe it to you to finish in their time as well, right? So I get that it's nice and we want to try and be as friendly as possible as a community. But if you're bringing one of the strongest teams, you owe it to your opponent to finish in time. If you bring one of the strongest teams that are out there and you don't finish in time, that's not fair on your opponent anyway. And we talked above in the previous episode, check it out, listen to it all again, about hopefully some really good ways of being able to play effectively within time. I think that's really useful for you able to do it. So, and it goes both ways. You can't just time delay yourself. That's no fun either. So those are my first 2 bits. Next thing I'd say, if you have the ability to turn off rerolls, right? If you have an ability to get rid of that relentless somehow, I'd say take it. Find a way to shut down that relentless, and it's going to reduce their killing effectiveness. Because if they're only hitting on 4s and they don't have any rerolls, that's going to hurt them. So try and look at a way of doing that. Another option that you have is early game, have models that are way, way more lethal than they want to charge their models into. Like if you have a model that will immediately kill a mutant, and they can't survive melee with you, they can't get torment, or they can't get a devotee into a mutant, etc., etc. So if you can really outperform in melee, then you can do that as well. So I think those are my main bits. So just to sort of like roll back and just go through it again. Can you alpha strike? If you can, focus on those key models. Like that leader, removing that model early is going to buy you so much later on. Can you make an early points rush? Can you get VP before? Like on loot, I think it's actually quite achievable to really pressure your opponent by getting those VPs early. And remember, even on turning point 3, just snagging a couple of VPs rather than killing is going to help you out. Predict those secondaries where you can, right? If they're playing Seek and Destroy, focus on killing their Rob and Ransack target. Focus on denying them eliminate guards. Focus on moving forward. So like maybe you can move off of the objective at the end of the turn and you don't have a target for eliminate guards. That's a good way of doing it. Try and make those marginal gains wherever you can, because they are probably going to table you. Use maximum engage, shoot hard, shoot early, really try and force that damage through. Don't get carried away with killing though. Again, it is play the objective. Don't be triggered when it's going wrong, and go with that. I think that's kind of like my main advice, Conor. Is there anything that you think I've missed on that, or anything that you would like to add in?
No, I think that's good sound advice, and I think you've reflected on what the tournament's doing at the minute and how that feeds into the strategy. But what if you're not playing Colts though? What if you're playing Beastman?
Right, exactly. So this is the next big bad guy on the block, right? Is what if you look opposite you and you have those Felgal Ravagers, you have the goat screaming in your face. There's a great bat rep, by the way, which is a little bit of a plug, but there is a great bat rep that is on GFN Gaming, where he's playing his blooded into Beastmen or Felgal Ravagers, and he's playing Ryan from up north. And it's so good. Like the production quality is insane. Like, and they're going like, oh man, how do I make videos like this? But yeah, really, really, really good. Anyway, that's a side tangent. But back to the question. The main one is how you're going to do it, right? So I think got a few options, right? You can kill and secure, as in like kill and secure the kill, which means if you're like 3 APL, you're going to shoot them, and you're then going to charge them and kill them with another hit. Or if you can double fight, you're going to charge, fight, and then kill on the second fight. So kill and secure the kill is one option. The other option is wound and position, right? So let's say they have they have a model that's on an objective. You can shoot them and you get them down to 2 wounds remaining. Well, you can now yeet yourself onto that objective and stand next to them. And they know that if they charge you, you only need to get 2 hits because they're going to hit you once and you're going to punch them back. And if you get 2 hits, then you're just going to, even if they parry the first one, you're still going to punch them and they're going to die, right? And they hate that. Like they really don't like dying in their own turn. So that will then massively mess with their mind and their way of being able to position. So if you can weaken them to 1 hit, I think that's a good place to be at. And I wouldn't say push too much further than that, because once you've achieved that, you've sort of got the maximum that you need. And then you can try and move up. So double fight is another great option. So either you're going to kill and secure the kill, or you're going to wound and you're going to position yourself. I think next you have the option of like a durable melee screen. So if you can outperform in melee, then you're immediately onto winner, right? Now the issue is that they're like 10 wounds and they have like relentless 4 attacks. They have 4 or 5 damage. So you have to be an absolute beast yourself to outperform in melee, but there are some of those that exist, right? So, and if again, that's a good option. If you can beat them in melee on their turn and kill them, it's going to help you out. Now, note as well that if they're already wounded, that's easier to do, right? So let's say you have a 4 damage weapon. Well, if you get them down to 4 wounds remaining or 8 wounds remaining, or in those damage brackets, suddenly you're in a much better place. Next option is, can you deny their rerolls? Because when they're wounded and they're charging you, they're usually hitting on 4s or something like 5s, or when they're wounded or something. Is there some equipment that you can use to deny those rerolls, or an ability that's going to turn that off, just to really reduce their reliability when they then charge you post? Because that will help you out as well. And then finally, I think it's probably going to be using Lethal 5 where you can, because it really changes the math. In fact, Connor, do you have the stats for what your percentage is to get a crit if you use a regular 6 or a Lethal 5?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So trying to get a 6, let's say you've got 3 attacks, 3 dice, you've got a 42.1% chance of getting a 6 with those 3 dice. If you go to Lethal 5, though, that jumps up to 70.4%. Look at 4 dice, you've got a 51.8% chance of getting a crit. But with Lethal 5, up to 80.2%. And then with 5 dice, you've got a 59.8% chance of getting a crit. But Lethal 5, 86.8% chance. So that Lethal 5 really increasing the odds of getting that crit.
Yeah. So like another good example would be like if you have GA2 or anything like that, and you have Lethal 5, and this could be a really good way of doing like a sneaky double fight to get rid of these models. One model is going to shoot them and kill them effectively, and the next model is going to GA2 in and get the Lethal 5 and try and get the kill next on it. I think that's a really good way of confirming those kills. And it's like you don't necessarily have to. Like if you leave a guy on 2 wounds, I said that's kind of like a mission kill as far as you're concerned. And then sure they can shoot you or that whatever, but they're not going to do much there. And then you can try and like swamp them on objectives and do that sort of stuff. So Lethal 5, like look at the maths of it. It's wild. Like if you have Lethal 5 and you have like 4 attacks, you're on like an 80% chance to roll a crit. So like let's say you're an intercessor sergeant, you're going to shoot someone potentially with upgraded damage, kill them, charge them, and you have an 80% chance to kill them. That's really good, right? Or if you're legionary, you could use fight twice, and you can, on your second attack, let's say you're a Shrive Talon or whatever it is, you're looking at like a 86.8% chance to get it. So it's really good as well. One thing I should say as well, if you had like base damage 5, that's really good because 2 hits kill. And if you have brutal, that's another great way of just like forcing them not to be able to parry you, right? Because they need to get crits to parry, which is pretty unlikely, some would say. So
Power Fist then.
Those are my say again, sorry.
Power Fist. 5/7.
Yeah.
Brutal.
That sort of thing. 5/7 brutal Power Fist. That's gonna be pretty nice. And if you have ways to like reduce how many attacks they have in melee, that's a really nice stacking benefit to get as well. So think about that. And that's kind of what I've got as generic advice. Now you can specialize that advice more for each team based on what equipment you have and what your abilities you have and tac ops, etc. But that's kind of what I think is the main points. Any comeback to any of that, Connor, or any points you want to add on or thoughts or anything like that?
No, I love it. It's a good general plan. Like you said, you could go more bespoke. I love the fact that the Hexorcist just got a buff and he can just slay these guys now. But
and that's really good FAQ clarification as well, because I think that's going to clarify a lot about a lot of the rules interactions that people were debating previously. Things like turning off elite dice, faith mechanics, etc. It shows that it works. So that's kind of cool, I think, in a weird way. Okay, Connor, anything else you want to add in before we round off?
I just want to take a chance to say thanks again to Pete for setting up the Kill Team calendar, and then maybe just remind everyone that if you are a TO or maybe you know a TO, just let them know that we've got this tool and get in touch with Ryan and we can get you up there. I think having a Kill Team calendar that everyone can look at would be great because, unfortunately, Ryan hates spending time with family and loved ones, so he needs to occupy his weekends as much as possible. So if we can try and saturate this would be much appreciated.
All I'm saying is this: if I'm at a tournament, then I'm not home. So like, we need to find more tournaments. Otherwise, it's werewolf time. I have to play Connor at home. To be fair, I managed to get a couple of games in of 10th. I say a couple of games. I played a Combat Patrol 10th game, 10th edition. That was fun.
Combat Patrol does look kind of fun. But that's not Kill Team though. But yeah, it does look kind of fun.
No, it's not Kill Team. But maybe we'll throw it up as a little skirmish thing. We might see what's going on because it was okay. It was fine. It was quite enjoyable. Although I think I'd still prefer Kill Team, but I didn't hate 10th.
I think the intercession needs a nerf in 10th, but yes.
Yeah, I think that those Space Marines, those pesky Space Marines, they should get another nerf. Luckily I'm playing Custodes, so. Anyway, right. So, okay, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon where you get exclusive access to all of our content ahead of time. You'll notice that these are released as segments. The patrons get the full episode straight away, and then we release these slowly but surely for everyone else for free. But as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Ryan. This has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.